Digital photography made simple.
Hello and welcome back to D1to1. On this segment, we're going to show you how easy it can be to take a self-portrait. There's more to taking a self-portrait than to photograph ourselves in some sort of reflective surface like a window, or to hold up our camera and point it at us and take that self-portrait. We want to show you and educate you on a more creative way to take a good self-portrait. Now, this style of photography can be creative and fun, and there are several advantages to learning how to be more creative with our self-portrait. Shooting self-portrait doesn't mean that you have to have somebody with you. In fact, you have full control of the composition and you could be in the photograph as well. Just think, you can now explore and interpret yourself in many situations. In fact, you'll probably say, why haven't I done these self-portraits before? Now, being a good photographer, learning to take a self-portrait is essential, because when you have a different lighting situation or a room that you go in and you want to be able to place people or friends, you're going to need a test subject. And you're going to be that test subject to go into your scene to make sure your exposure or your framing is correct. So self-portraiture really helps you gain a better knowledge in taking those shots.
A self-portrait is a wonderful way for us to document or interpret ourselves through the photographic process. Think of it as a visual photographic journal. Now, it's not a difficult task, but it is going to take a little know-how on the function of the self-timer in our cameras. Now, we already have a video on self-timer, so we suggest you go and take a look at that video to get a better understanding on how the self-timer works in your camera. A self-timer is one way to trigger our shutter, but there are other ways as well. Remember these? The cable release. Now, they do come in longer lanes, so we can have some distance from our cameras. The problem with cable releases, though, is that we're going to have to try to hide the cord. But today, we have remote control devices that allow us to trigger our shutters electronically, giving us a little bit more freedom to have within our image, so that when we want to grab that shot, we can get it within that split second. Self-portraits don't always have to be the whole image of ourselves. Let's think about this a bit further. We could use and be more creative with different elements, or parts of different elements, with portions of our body in a shot, giving us the ability to express more of who we are with a different point of view. Experimenting with different backgrounds and elements versus how much of ourselves we place into our compositions help us create more fascinating moods and feelings, revealing more about ourselves because we are in full control of how we are creating our image.
Now, one of the best elements we have when we're photographing a self-portrait is to use a mirror. Now, I know that's an obvious choice, but to make a more interesting photograph, we could use the whole mirror or parts of it and be a little bit more creative with our self-portraits. Showing the mirror and the reflection at the same time gives us dimensions to our images. As you can see, I'm looking in the mirror and you can see the back of my head. That creates dimensions in a creative image. Now, we can use other reflective surfaces like glass or metal or water to give us other dimensions when we take a self-portrait. Take a look at some of the images we have, and I think you'll find them pretty interesting self-portraits.
Now, a self-portrait is left to our interpretation, but if we want our reflection in focus, we have to remember point and shoots and new digital cameras today work with an infrared focusing system, and they may not always focus on our reflection itself. A lot of times they're going to focus on the actual glass of the mirror or of a window. A really simple way to make sure that our reflection stays in focus, especially with a point and shoot, is just put your focal length to infinity. And there's a great way to know that your distance will be covered into your reflection when you want to keep that reflection in focus. Remember, we're working alone in this process. So when we set up our shot, we're going to have to give this a little more thought. When we use a tripod or keep our camera stationary, like on a table, we're going to want to have some stand-in objects to replace ourselves when we compose our shot first, so that when we put ourselves back into our composition, we're going to know exactly where we are in our shot, so we can trigger that remote to get the composition we want.
Now, if we really want control over our focusing, you really need to move up to an SLR, because in an SLR we have manual focus, and that's where we're going to be very accurate exactly where we want to focus in our reflections. Now, most point and shoots will not let us take off automatic focusing, so that's really the difference between the SLR and the point and shoot. So move up to an SLR if you want to be a little bit more creative.
Use your imagination. A self-portrait can reveal a lot about you.
And the environment that we place ourselves in is just as important as the objects within that setting, which helps us create our story.
We always express that experimentation and practice make us smarter and better photographers.
So if you've never attempted to take a self-portrait, we encourage you to do so.
Don't just be a snapshot photographer. Expand your photographic horizons and go shoot yourself.
Be a creative photographer. Look to us for the best tips on digital photography here on Digital 1-to-1.